First, let me welcome all of you to this press conference. It is an important chapter in our young party. I'll give a very brief introduction and I'll let my two hardworking people do all the work. So all the questions you ask them. What did I say? Okay. We are very excited actually to share the party's manifesto, which represents our vision for a better Singapore. We believe always in the importance of transparency, accountability, and citizen engagement. And our manifesto reflects these values. Now, these are my beliefs also when I first started the party. So I think the manifesto will carry many of these fundamental principles of good governance. So shall I pass the mic now to who?
To me?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi everybody. Before we start the questioning on the content of our...
This, I forgot to show you, this is our... You are not privy to this just yet, but I think we'll let you have it. Is it today?
Yes.
Today we get a copy of it.
No, they got it online.
Oh, okay.
This copy is only for you.
Yeah.
You only make one copy.
I'm not digital yet. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Okay, let me carry on again. Start again. Yeah, before we go into the specific questions, what I want to highlight are a few points about our manifesto. This is the manifesto. First point I'd like to highlight is that this manifesto represents a state of policies that we have researched. Okay, the parliamentary team have done a lot of research on them. But most importantly, most of these policies, about 60 of them represented in this manifesto, most of them has been well debated in Parliament. So it has stood the test of debate in Parliament. And also the government cannot say that oppositions have not suggested good alternative solutions to our problems. This is the first point I want to emphasize. Second point is that our manifesto represents the voices of the people. Although we are a young party, we have actually intensively walked the ground over the last 5 years of our existence. Even after the last GE, we continue to walk the ground. And we have collected a lot of feedback from residents about their problems and all that. Whenever we have a problem, whenever we hear a problem or concern, we'll pick it up and then we'll look at some of the statistics, some of the other data, and see whether there is indeed a potential problem. And if we are satisfied with ourselves that it is indeed a potential problem, we will bring it up in Parliament. So this manifesto represents the voices of the people. Third and last point about our manifesto is that this is a work in progress. We believe at PSP that any credible political party must have credible policies. So we have done in our first 4 years in Parliament, we have done what we think are the most urgent problems of Singaporeans. So we have debated many of the problems like jobs, housing, cost of living. We have also given some idea as to how are we going to fund it. We didn't make recommendations and then forget about the funding. Financial prudence is always part of our policy research. Not like what the government has said, raiding the reserves and whatever they try to label us. But I said just now, it is work in progress. Because in the first Parliament that PSP is in, we can only bring out the major problems. We are committed in the next Parliament to actually put all this together and come up with our own social compact to show to Singaporeans. We call that Progress for All Social Compact. Okay. And this social compact, I can assure you, will contain a lot more substantial policies than what you have seen in Forward Singapore, presented by the government. Okay, with that, I would like to say we hope and we continue to work hard to gain the trust of Singaporeans at the ballot box so that we can realize this vision, complete this social compact that we want to draw for Singaporeans, for country, for people.
Yeah, we shall now invite Hazel to share some thoughts.
On behalf of PSP, I'd like to thank the team of members, volunteers and consultants who have contributed a lot of time and effort towards this manifesto. This is a collective effort and would not have been possible if not for the contributions from all of you. Thank you very much. And now allow me to say a few words in Mandarin. 大家好，今天前进党发布了我们的竞选口号，还有党纲。我们的竞选口号是携手前进。这个口号生动地描绘了我们前进党的核心理念和价值观。我们自创党以来就一直强调，我国的政策必须贯彻同理心，要照顾所有的国人，促进一个国家的发展，不能像管理一间公司一样。社会和经济的发展必须惠及所有的新加坡人，这就是携手前进背后的核心理念。为了实现携手前进的目标，我们在党纲里发表了60多项政策建议。我们相信这些政策建议能够解决新加坡人最关心的一些课题，例如生活费高昂、主物价格上涨和还有医药费上涨的等等问题。接下来我们会和国人进行交谈，让他们更加了解我们的党纲。我们也期待与执政党理性的辩论我们的政策建议。谢谢。
Before we go into the questions proper, I also like to make one more point that this manifesto has been mostly done during under the leadership of Hazel. Okay, so she has done a very good job, and of course, she will understand the structure of this manifesto. She's the best person to understand the whole structure of this manifesto. So, meeting afterwards, please direct your questions at her.
That's nice. Thank you,
Well,
Manuel.
I will be fair to both of them.
Thanks, Manuel, Doc, Hazel. Before we open the questions to the floor, we have a few questions prior that I will pose to either of them to answer. So, for the first question, with asking the government to take on the burden of medishield, CareShield, minimum living wage, budget meals, etc., how does the PSP propose funding these social policies? And question 2 is related to this. Will PSP's proposals be fully funded just from existing income and adjusting the use of land sales proceeds, without having to implement additional revenue raises or revenue streams, such as a wealth or capital gains tax?
Our proposals are revenue neutral and can be funded from changes in how we treat land costs for public housing. So, for example, the cost of our major proposals reducing GST to 7% would cost us about $3 to $4 billion in lost revenue, and paying Medishield Life premiums will cost about $2 to $3 billion. Allowance for full-time homemakers, which we estimate at around $2 billion. In total, that will cost us about $7 to $9 billion. And how we're going to fund this will come from savings from paying land costs under our affordable home scheme, which is estimated at $7 billion as of 2024. And our employment pass levy estimated at $1 to $2 billion, which in total gives us savings or additional revenues of 8 to 9 billion. So the two more or less cancels off. So in terms of revenue-wise, it's neutral.
Okay, thanks, Hazel. Still not working. So I'll still use that.
Okay.
Thank you, Hazel. So the next question, which is I think very interesting, of the various proposals, which does PSP consider the most urgent?
I would think for us the most urgent will be, of course, our cost of living, our measures to reduce cost of living, which includes reducing GST to 7%, for the government to pay the Medishield life premiums, and also to under our to reduce food prices. We also propose that rents at hawker centres be fixed at either $500 per month or 3% of gross revenue, and also food discounts for Blue Trust card holders and those senior citizens in Pioneer generation and Merdeka generation, and of course the housing prices to not price in land cost on first purchase unless it is subsequently sold on the resale market. Yeah, so these are cost reducing measures.
Again, thank you, Hazel. And this is again for Hazel. Question 4. Multiple pathways to success. Is this not the same as MOE's current direction under the PAP?
Yes, actually, in recent years, the government has also moved towards the multiple pathways for success, introducing more ways for people going through different educational paths. But I think what we want to push for is even greater diversity. Like, for example, we have been pushing very hard for a pilot project in Through Train, where students can enter primary and secondary levels without going through the PSLE, to serve as an option, where the bulk of the students can still go through the PSLE route if you choose, but there should be choice for certain parents and students who prefer to go the other route. And also we are also proposing that, for example, in entry requirements for universities, to not just consider only academic achievements, but also to take into account working experience or relevant working experience in certain industries, to consider as qualifying for entry into certain faculties.
Pardon our voices, we've been really door to door every day, talking to residents. And this next question is related to, I'll open to the floor. And this next question is relevant to what we've been doing. So for the 2020 GE manifesto, PSP has then highlighted that it was the culmination of months of research and consultations with the public. Is this still the same for this year's manifesto?
Yeah, let me answer that. Yeah, as I said just now, this manifesto represents the voices of the people. So of course, compared to the 2020 manifesto, actually we have further enhanced our interaction with the residents, and we have gathered even more feedback from them. So definitely this manifesto is a representation of what the people wants to ask the government about.
Thank you, Manuel. Last question before I open to the floor. The PSP proposes a minimum living wage of 2,250 per month, stating that this would allow workers to meet their basic needs with dignity and reduce reliance on social support schemes. However, Singapore has no officially defined poverty line. So what model or benchmarks has the PSP used to calculate this specific amount? Without a nationally recognized poverty threshold, how can we be confident that this figure meaningfully reflects what is required for a minimally adequate standard of living? excluding subsidies, charities, and government transfers?
Yes. I've been asked about this many times already, so my answer is the same. We have recommended a minimum living wage of $2,250 because the take-home pay for that gross salary will be $1,800. And we think that $1,800, based on our interaction with the residents, and more importantly, based on a minimum income standard study done by the NUS, I think it was reported in 2021 or so, that and that study shows that the minimum income requires for Singaporeans to live decently in Singapore is about $1,730, I think. Yeah. So based on that, so we round it up to $1,800. We think that is the level of income we want Singaporean workers to have. So that, like we say in our last manifesto in 2020, anyone who has put in a days of hard work ought not to have to worry that he still cannot feed his family or feed himself. So that's why, based on that principle and spirit, we're pushing for a minimum living wage.
Thanks, Manwai. And now I shall let Arthur.
Arthur Hanson, I'm just here to pay for.
You represent which newspaper?
Huh?
You represent
I'm
newspaper.
sorry,
Okay.
I just get crashed can.
Okay.
No, I wanted to ask a question because this is a follow-up to what Mr. Leong said in his introduction. He says that many of the policies have been discussed and debated in Parliament and withstood the test of debate.
Yes.
You can also see it as the motions having been defeated or amended or replaced by what the government says should be the case. So when you say withstood the test of debate, how do you intend to take it further? That would be one. My second question is for Ms. Phua. The funding of your social policies, you say, right, will come from other policies that you all have proposed as well. Now, it seems to me that this will have to be a wholesale reworking of the system of government for you to be able to get revenue changes that will fund your social policies. And that seems to be, if there are no revenue changes, the way you want it, whether it's your minimal affordable housing scheme or whether it is your land costs, how you get it as a revenue stream and all that, you would not be able to fund your social policies. So if that's the case, really how do you think you can go forward from there like that? You have to be the government,
Thank you.
But you don't mind, can I answer both questions?
I don't mind.
Yeah, you don't mind. Okay, on your first question, I say our policies have stood the test of Parliament and of debate in Parliament. And you rightfully pointed out that most of our motions are being amended by the government. Right? So I think we ought to take parliamentary debates in this way. The government, being a supermajority government, will always be amending our motion. But that doesn't mean the debate itself has no value. Right? So if you look at the debates that have gone through in Parliament, okay, has the government actually countered our arguments effectively, or the government has actually, tried to avoid debate, you judge yourself. But what I think is that we have put forward many of these ideas, and the government have not also effectively, have not actually counter our policies and say, oh, these policies are complete, not workable policies. So what we have done is that we have presented, the government has also listened, and then the government may come up with a few points about raising the reserves, about this policy is going to cause a collapse in the price of resale HDB prices and all that. But they actually have not done more research and come up with a full counter argument. Okay. So I think what we have presented in Parliament actually represents new information and knowledge for Singaporeans, and Singaporeans can judge that. So what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, we have actually gone through all this debate, and that is what I mean by having stood the test of parliamentary debate. It does not equate to, because the government rejected your motion, so your debates are all irrelevant. That's what I want to say, first point. Second point about the funding. I think what we have, the answer we provided just now is basically to say that we are so conscious of fiscal prudence that we actually, when we propose a policy, we actually think of another policy to raise the revenue, right? Like if we impose a $1,200 employment pass levy, we can raise about $3 billion. And we see no reason why we have levy on the SP, the work permit holders, but we have no levy on the employment pass holders. So that was, and that is important to ensure a level playing field for Singaporeans. So we have been recommending that, and that revenue can be used to pay some of the other policies that we proposed. But nevertheless, I have gone through great length in Parliament to say that this government there's no lack of fiscal resources in this government. That's why you go back and look at my full motion on public finance. Right? That's why I do public finance. I do the motion so that nobody can say PSP only know how to put up populist policies and don't have the revenue to fund it. In the public finance motion, the main point I've said is that we have $25 billion of NIRC every year, and that has not been properly deployed for expenditure for Singaporeans. Definitely, the NIRC is not spent in the current year. They put away in the funds, all kinds of funds, and then spend the money slowly over time. So if you actually want to care about Singaporeans' cost of living problems and all that, you can spend the 25 billion more for the current year spending. Right? But they locked away 80% of that on the average. So this was the main point I put forward in my public finance motion. Right? Of course, the government countered and said, oh, these funds are actually all in the same pool. It is not the NIRC, but whether it's NIRC or other revenue, it's all in the same pool. And then this money, like for example, last year about, was it 18 billion put into the funds, then it's the same when you use the 18 billion and divide by the amount of NIRC on that year, and you can come up with an 80% number. So whether the money is from NIRC or not from NIRC, it is in a way a moot point. It's trying to avoid the debate. You actually indeed transfer the amount of money, right? And that amount of money is equivalent to 80% of the NIRC, so it's still the same. So what I'm saying is that you are putting away the NIRC into all these funds every year. You could have used more of that to help Singaporeans in their cost of living. Not handouts, but reduce GST, and then all kinds of other long-term schemes that you can actually establish for Singaporeans. So to answer Bertha's question in a very long-winded way, what I'm trying to say that we have enough fiscal resources. We don't need to change the whole policy framework. We don't even need to change the reserve management framework, which I'm very familiar. Okay, thanks.
Does it work? Okay, not yet.
Hello, hi. I'm Matthias from Mothership. So my question to all three of you is, how many candidates is PSP planning to field for this election? And if the total number is not enough to form a majority in government, how would the PSP MPs push for some of your policy recommendations that you have, some of your policy recommendations beyond just raising awareness in Parliament through the debates? How would you push for its implementation?
I think, to be honest, we won't be able to form the government. We are only a young party, and the last general election, we fielded quite a number of candidates. But then, we have to reconsider our strategy and see what is the best position we should adopt in the current political situation. And definitely, I can't tell you now how many candidates, but definitely it won't be the same number as before. So we can't form the government. But I think it is important that at least if we get into the House, we can put forward all these policies. You see, we tell you beforehand. And if subsequent general elections and we do well and Singaporeans have more faith in us, then I'm sure we can make the changes we want. That's why I tell my new candidates coming in, you must go to Parliament. You must prove yourself worthy to be for people to listen to you. So that then when they make that choice, PSP will be the first choice when they go to the polls. So it is very important. I don't think we can really form a government. I'd rather be honest with you than try to say that, we do this and do that. Cannot. But this would be set a stage for all these young MPs, if they get into the House, to prove themselves they are worthy of representing the people they have been, they elected them.
If I may add on to what Dr. Tan Ching Bok has said, I think what Parliament is about is a forum for the contestation of ideas. First of all, the ideas must come out. And the ideas will cross-pollinate. And the MPs, the parliamentarians will then pick up the ideas and then we discuss and debate. So that is the first is the culture that we want to develop in Parliament. And we have been saying that the government is holding back information, holding back some data and all that, right? So we hope that the government will also supply more of that information to allow a free contestation of ideas. It doesn't mean that because we don't form the government immediately, in the immediate future, such policies, ideas are useless, right? So, and at the same time, if you observe very closely, actually many of our ideas over the last 4 years has some influence on government policies. You look at the way they are so worried about manpower policies, right? You look at the way they have ramped up supply of housing, although we think that ramping up the supply is not a solution, but they ramp up supply nevertheless, because our housing ideas, the ideas that we have presented in our housing motion has gone down to the ground. Singaporeans and even other parliamentarians are taking those ideas very seriously. Okay. So even though we are not the government, but ideas will still influence ideas. So I think we'll continue to do that. Okay, basically to show our worth in Parliament.
What I want to say is actually rather similar to what Manwai just said, but I wanted to give specific examples. Like, for example, we had the debate on jobs for Singaporeans, and we believe that resulted subsequently in the Compass system, and where they specifically imposed limits on nationality. So that's one concrete change that we have successfully pushed for. So we will continue doing the same thing that we have been doing, even though we cannot get completely what we asked for. There will be some progress, right? For example, another example would be the housing, where we keep harping on the longer waiting time, and we push for government to actually plan for the building of the number of flats to be based on projection, right? Based on the number of marriages, based on immigration and so on. And they have been resisting, but you see that now they're increasing the number of flats for shorter waiting time. they've been maintaining like 2 to 3 thousand, but now lately they said that they're going to increase that to about 4,000 a year and expect more to movements in that direction. So despite the fact that we don't form the government, we can effect change.
Yep, hi. I'm Kian Kiong from Channel 8. Just now Dr. Tan mentioned the number is definitely not the same. Are you actually expecting PSP to have more candidates this round compared to the previous G?
Okay, this round we are probably going to have fewer candidates. Yeah. But how many candidates we are going to field at the moment, we still have not finalized our numbers.
While the numbers is not finalized yet, can you tell us a bit of which GRC or NSC are you looking to participate?
Okay, definitely we are going to compete in contest in West Coast, which is now called West Coast, Jurong West, and Choa Chu Kang. The rest we are still in the planning stage.
Sorry, one more question. In your executive summary saying, the public policy shouldn't be driven by economic concerns, but must also consider social objective. Are you indicates the current public policies are too much economic driven?
Yes, I think we've said as much in Parliament.
Correct?
Hello, I have two questions. The first one is, I think, Nanda, earlier you said that the ideas that were brought up in Parliament in the past 5 years have been the ones that are urgent. And then now you can bring up some that are a bit more social, compact, a bit broader. Why is it that PSP thinks that it is time to bring in these less urgent proposals? Is it because you think that enough progress has been made on the more urgent ones? And I think secondly, when you asked about which are the most urgent proposals, Hazel, I think you spoke about cost of living measures. Would it be accurate then to say that PSP thinks that the government is not doing enough in those areas specifically, that's why these are the most urgent areas? Thank you.
Okay, Hazel will address the second question. I'll address the first question first. I like to use this analogy. There are many problems in the current Singapore social economic model. That's what PSP did. So, but one of the most urgent problems are actually job security, cost of living, and our rising and very high housing cost. So these are the things that we need to address first. In a way, is to stop the bleeding. You know, if a patient comes into the accident and emergency department and he's bleeding, you stop the bleeding first. Then after that, you revive his body, right? Okay. To revive his body, then you must think a bit more as to what this patient, besides maybe he just got into an accident, besides that, does he have other illnesses? So we have to understand a bit more, and then we have to come up with an overall treatment plan, right? So in the same way, for social economic policy, the ultimate objective is to have a social compact, right? So, but the social compact first requires a bit more discussion with Singaporeans. You see what the Singaporeans really want. Although the former Singapore social compact put up the government, did put up quite a fair bit on that, so we got some, we can make some reference to that. But we want to know what the Singaporeans want. And then when we actually use our current policies as the base and further develop those policies, we have to look at how we can gel the whole thing together. Meaning, you know what system analysis, right? There are many parts of, like that's why in Parliament we always say whole of government approach, whole of society approach, right? So there are many other parts. Okay, like for example, You cannot solve the job problems completely by not looking at education and training, right? So, and you cannot solve, and the next step is that you cannot solve the job problems by not providing better jobs to Singaporeans. And to provide better jobs to Singaporeans is to look at the whole plan as to how we are going to develop our economy. Of course, the government has talked about research, innovation, enterprise, right? So, but are we very successful so far? We are not, right? Right? So PSP will present ideas to you in the next Parliament as to how we can make RIE work. How, from a multi-pathway education option that we have proposed, how from the multi-pathway we can develop further and actually cause a meaningful and useful education reform for Singapore. But these two things are very big, and then one more thing we are going to do is, Dr. Tan is a doctor. We want to look at healthcare reform. So these are the three main areas: education, healthcare, future economy, that we are going to look at, and then we bring all these things together and present a social compact to Singaporeans.
In answer to that urgent matter, it is actually Singaporeans who are telling us that these are the most urgent matters to address. In all our interactions with residents when we're walking around, every time we ask residents, what is your biggest concern? Almost always is cost of living that comes up. And at our end, we ourselves see that there really is room for more to be done and can be done.
Yeah.
Hello, Wei Kai from the Straits Times. So I have one question and one clarification. First clarification follows on from the first question previously. Can I confirm that, based on what you said just now, Mr. Leong, does that mean that the policies that have been debated in Parliament, which you are presenting in the manifesto, have not been amended following the rejection by the PAP government? And my question is, most of the policies in the manifesto today seem to focus mainly on domestic policy. Given the increasingly uncertain global outlook, does the PSP have a view on this? And what policies in the proposal are pointed at the current situation? Thank you.
Okay.
Manuel.
Wait, Kai. Can you repeat your first policy? Yeah, because you distracted me with your external thing.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll repeat the clarification. So you said earlier that your policies that have been proposed in Parliament have withstood the debate in Parliament. And so what I wanted to ask was, does that mean that they have been presented today in the original form, or have they been amended after the debate?
Okay.
Thank you.
None of our policies have been amended. Because the government didn't put up a very strong counter argument, right? Even the AHS, Affordable Home Scheme, well, I invited them many times. Let's debate again. You say I'm raiding the reserve. Show me what are the numbers. That's why it led to the Wilton Nair video, right? I said, do you know how much you have, and do you know how much we are spending? And if you don't know these two numbers, how can you say I'm raiding the reserve? Right? So none of our policies have been amended, even after the debate. They just changed the motion as well. And we cannot avoid that, just two of us, and there are 83 MPs. Right? Okay.
Second question.
Second question about external events. Of course, being parliamentarians, the most important thing we'll be focusing on is the lives and livelihood of Singaporeans. So naturally, most of our interest will be on that. So that's why the last 4 years we've been talking about that. And of course, recently the world is getting even more and more uncertain because there were political changes worldwide, especially in the US. And recently, of course, you have heard about tariffs and all that. Okay. But what I want to say is that Singapore is a small nation. We are a small nation. We are always subject to the effects of external events. But have we failed before? No. So we should take all these events in our own stride. Right? Come, we overcome it. Right? In the 1970s, when I was still a child, and I've said I think related that thing about 3 times in Parliament, I follow my mother, to go to the community center to buy rice, subsidized heavily by the NTUC at the time. And that now become the fair price. At the time, I don't think there's a name fair price yet. Huh? Sino. Oh, savage, savage. So, inflation, 1970s, worldwide inflation, stagflation, those are even bigger events than what we are seeing today. Even with tariffs or whatever. Can it compare to the oil crisis of the 70s? No. We overcome it. Because the government at the time know how to deal with it. Right? So, today we have all these formulas, all these experiences accumulated. Singaporeans know how to support the government, whoever is the government, to overcome all these challenges. Right? So, what is important is that our society continue to remain united, fair, and in fact, it has to be a fair society before you can continue to be united, right? So I think fair should come first. Fair, united, and also diverse society. We can accommodate many different kinds of opinions, cultures, to have a diverse society. And a diverse society is always a far stronger society. Okay? So as long as our society is united and strong, we can overcome any challenges that come in our way.
Are you saying that the government leaders' recent rhetoric on, inflection point and corrections need, shock, all good, they're going to have shocks. Are these all overblown?
I think Singaporeans would know how to judge that. Okay. Well, we listen, but what I'm trying to say is that Singaporeans have not have experienced many challenges in the past. So we are not going to be defeated by the new challenges that are coming on our way. Important thing is that we must make our domestic politics right. And domestic politics is now taking on a direction that, like Dr. Tan has said, has lost its way under one-party government. So we must get our politics right so that we get back to the right track to have a really fair and so become a more united and a diverse society.
And I would just like to add on that actually for us it was a conscious decision to exercise greater restraint in areas of foreign policy as well as defense policy because these are external facing areas and I think that in such situations we want to be united and not compromise the government's ability to protect Singapore's interests.
Thanks for the assurance online. Excellent perspective there. And next question would be.
Good afternoon. My name is Mahimi from Bukit Timah. From the manifestos, the policies made broadly are on the national level, right? So, are there any specific policies that look at the minority groups?
What we believe is in a Singaporean Singapore. We look at policy from the perspective of whether Singaporeans are being affected or worse still, Singaporeans are suffering from certain events, and we will apply our policies to all Singaporeans who need help. So in that sense, we are not focusing particularly on any of the minority in our manifesto, but in many of our policies. For example, the policies with regards to families, maybe some of those policies will benefit some of some segments of Singaporeans more than the others. Yeah? So when we actually look at the policy, first we look at the Singaporean, but at the same time we also look at inside the affected Singaporeans. Okay, how many are the minorities and how many are the how many are the minorities? And from there, actually, we do make some conscious effort to actually make their policies even more attractive, so that even more effective, so that the minorities can benefit more. But other than that, we do not focus just on minorities. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we want to achieve ultimately is a race-blind Singapore. And we are, of course, against discrimination of any forms. And when we structure schemes to help Singaporeans, it's more considering in terms of like income level or maybe educational level, things that go cuts across races, just groups that require greater assistance.
So basically, a good policy would benefit all, mining. Yeah.
Hi, Marty from Singapore. Just to follow on Jin Chan's question earlier, could you explain a little more why you are going to field lesser candidates this year? And then will it not be a concern that Singaporeans may feel that you are not doing enough to actually get your way into the parliament by fielding lesser candidates? You answer that.
Our conclusion from the last election is that we need to focus a bit more. Because to run an election is actually a very complicated affair. From the amount of money you have to raise, which is actually, compared to the other problems that I'm going to say, is actually less of a problem than other problems. Like, for example, manpower. Dedicated manpower to canvass the ground, and then make sure that the engagement is properly done, and also when you coordinate a communication strategy for 24 candidates, it's different from that of coordinating the strategy for like 18 candidates. Yeah? And if you have 44 candidates, then the communication strategy will be even more complicated. So learning from the last experience, we thought this round we have to focus. And that's the reason why this round we probably will be fielding fewer candidates from the last round.
Sorry, the second part of the question, would it be a concern that people may feel that you're not doing enough? How do you actually...
Okay, I think we are liaising with the other opposition parties. I think important thing that we bear in mind is that we hope every ward will be contested. And at the moment, I think the opposition parties have there are enough parties who are coming in to contest in every ward. In fact, our main concern now is to make sure they don't do three-corner fight as well, right? So there are. So it is important to do that. We are always against, in this era. In the last era, it's okay, but in this era, we are always against the by-election strategy, where you deprive the majority of the Singaporeans from experiencing democracy. So we want every ward to be contested. So we are satisfied that probably every ward will be contested, and what PSP need to focus on this round is to get into Parliament.
I'll answer your question. Hello. Now you're wondering why we scale down the number of candidates. I think we got to learn from past experience. When I first started, we were all green. We just wanted footprints, as many footprints as possible. So in a way, we just went and we learned from our mistakes. I'll be the first to say I've made a mistake. But then I have to strategize now. I've got to find what is the best way forward. So currently, I see this. So we do this. It doesn't mean this same formula will apply in future. Because if we do get members into the House, it's a very good a place for Singaporeans to recognize the value of PSP candidates. And I hope, and I really hope, their performance will attract more and more people into the political arena. So this is not just, well, I do this, I'll continue doing it. No. This is part of a long-term strategy. Politics is a long-term game. And I already told those chaps, even if I'm not around, they must keep on planning. Each battle is fought differently. So this one, we have to strategize properly, make good, strong footholds, and hope for our best. Thank you.
This is Yusa from AWO. So just to follow up on the questions now, is it a result of a discussion with other opposition parties to avoid a pre-conflict? And also, I can't help but notice that two of you are wearing masks today. So how are you feeling? Especially, maybe people are concerned about doctors' health. Yeah, thank you.
Look, I wear masks because I'm to protect you guys. You see, I went out with you guys, but you just brought me around. You followed where I went in all the town visits. So maybe you all gave me the germs, But having said that, I'm just teasing. But honestly, as a doctor, it's my practice. When I'm a little ill, I like to stay away. Because I cannot pass the germs to anybody. So you all also must do the same. Mask, it's all right. In Japan, everybody masks. A little bit of cough, they mask. So we should mask, okay? So don't worry, I'm not sick. If I'm sick, I won't be here to respond to all the questions they impose to us. So what is the question? I thought I forgot it.
Discussion with other opposition parties.
Oh, I think we have discussions with opposition parties, but we don't have a very formalized anything. Because if you want to say get two parties together, it's a big thing, There's a lot of re-registration of party slogans. I mean
Negotiations.
Oh, negotiations.
Can I answer the question?
Okay.
No, our decision is not based on discussing with the other opposition parties. It's our own strategic decision, right? So, but after having made the strategic decision, we are mindful of the fact that are all the wards going to be contested or not? So that's where we go out and check with the other opposition parties, but not our own strategy.
Thanks.
Okay, actually I don't need to use the mic. I think I'm loud enough. I'm Lulu from Shaming. So following up on what Mangwai said about Singapore being a very small country, that's correct. But we're also a very open economy, and there's very few economies in the world that are as open as us. So I guess while yes we have to remain focused domestically, what happens externally outside geopolitically as well might have a very amplified influence on how we do domestically. So I understand that the PSP exercises restraint on external facing policies and stuff. But I guess the reasons why a lot of Singaporeans have been very concerned about the tariffs recently is because of how it might impact us, our cost of living domestically. So would you say that the proposals brought forward in the manifesto are adequate enough to prepare for sudden shockwaves such as tariffs and also Mr. Trump in general?
Of course, nothing is going to be perfect all the time. As time changes, right? So even the government must come up with supplementary budget. Right? So when time changes, you cannot say that, then your 2025 budget is not ready to deal with the shock. We cannot foresee everything, right? So, and also on the external events, I already said, one, normally we exercise restraint, we don't criticize the government on the external policies, because we must stand united as Singapore and Singaporeans when we are facing the foreigners. But at the same time, when there's implication to say that these external events will affect Singapore, and all that, then we have to think deeper. Right? So, but the effect of the tariffs until now, even the financial markets, I'm from the financial markets, over 30 years of experience, don't really know what will be the impact, right? Because the resultant impact of the tariff still need to actually, you need time to figure out what will be the impact, and especially on individual countries, right? So, but for us, at the moment, what I can think of is this tariff is about tariff imposed on our exports, right? Which is not going to affect our cost of living, which is imports.
That's the direct impact. We also import from many other countries who are slapped with very serious tariffs.
No, those tariffs is when they go into don't go into the US, right? But if they export to Singapore, there's no tariff.
There will be change in trading routes and stuff. So there will be indirect impact.
Yeah, so that part need to be looked at, right? So like, for example, if China, and probably our largest, I think our largest trading partner today is China, right? When China sell things to us, they're not going to impose any tariff. We're not going to impose any tariff, and they have no tariff on us, right? So only when we sell those products to the US, then, so the inflation at the moment caused by all these tariffs is actually inside the US. They have the biggest problem. So why we worry about inflation? I think we are drawing the wrong conclusion there at the moment. But of course, as I say, how the effect is going to, what is the resulting effect? Being an economist by training, I don't dare to make conclusion right now. We have to see the effect a bit more. But at the moment, I think the topic is a little overblown.
Okay. Including how the ministers have been coming out to say how we can brace for significant impact from the tariffs. That's also overblown.
Let me answer that.
I think they are entitled to their own experience. But from my point of view, I think that the tariff that I sort of have read about at the moment will not cause that much impact as what has been reported.
I think this call by the government ministers about this tariff, in my opinion, is partly to instill fear in the voter. So the voter will be so frightened, oh, this thing is going to happen, it's going to be serious, you better vote for the incumbent, safe bet. So I like to say that these things must be studied carefully, and by economists like Manwai and all these people, on the real impact of this tariff on our people. Don't just make statements of this kind and scare everybody. Okay?
Well, maybe I add one more point is that, but of course, the direction that the US government is taking is not just tariff, a lot of policies and all that. So in the end, when even bigger things happen, we do not know. But at the moment, if you talk about tariffs, I think we are a bit overblowing the thing.
Okay, so these are rather recent developments, and we think that it is still evolving, and we really need to monitor this closely before we talk about, changing any of our proposals in the manifesto. It's a bit premature now. Of course, we need to monitor developments very closely. But I think what is clear is that with this evolving trade environment and reduced visibility of what's ahead of us, what is clear is that actually we need more perspectives, not less. We need more ideas, not less.
Cable.
So I have two questions, please. One is for the two NCMPs. I'd like to know how your experience as SCMPs is preparing you better or not for this coming general election, the fight ahead. What has the experience as NCMPs taught you? Secondly, I think Ms. Phua, you've gone to say that West Coast, Jurong West has been like totally chopped up until don't know how, and basically a lot of people have been moved out and you have to restart all over again. I mean, so basically you're starting on the back foot. So that being the case, how are you intending to make up for this?
Okay, being an NCMP, of course, it gave us time to learn how things work in Parliament. So I believe that after 4.5 years, we are much better prepared to deal with how to get things done in Parliament, how to push our agenda, and how to parry the attacks aimed at us. It has also made a lot more people recognize us on the ground, and it's made them more willing to talk to us, and they tell us a lot more than when before we were NCMPs. So that has been very, very helpful. What was the last question? Right. Well, okay, you know, we knew West Coast was going to be changed, and so of course, we're unhappy with the magnitude of the change, but we're just going to take it and you know, start plowing the ground as best we can.
Well, I know they gave us that piece of huge territory. So I went back to that area and I discovered many of my old village, Ama King village, were all resettled there. Most of it in Jurong West, Choa Chu Kang, and also in, I think, part of Manila, Taman Jurong. So they called me. So I went round to the ground and they say, we communicate in Hokkien. We speak the language of the village. And hearing the language of the villagers, I'm a little bit chill. So I will go down to the ground. I'll speak the language. I'll let them know that once upon a time, I looked after them as a doctor. Now I shall bring a team to come and then look after them in Parliament. That is the only, there's a silver lining, they call it, isn't it? Okay, let's hope.
In other words, our secret weapon in 2020 is Dr. Tan Cheng Bong. 2025 is still Dr. Tan Cheng Bong.
Any other questions?
Okay, no more.
We can close.
Okay, let me thank all of you for coming to this meeting here. Of course, all these are all not cast in stone. I always believe nothing is cast in stone. As time progresses and as we get more experience and we learn more things, we have to change. Because if we are afraid of change and just stuck to one particular formula, we are finished. So keep on changing and make sure that we change for the better. So with that note, I thank all of you for coming. Have you got refreshments for them? Sorry, party poor.
No budget.
No budget, okay? Okay, anyway, thanks for coming.
Maybe we do a photo, you want to hold up the manifesto? The three of you.
So many photos are okay now. Yeah.
Okay, maybe three of you stand up. Stand up. Whatever the teachers do. Learn you can go into the meeting. Sorry, my social media guy can also pass in the teacher. Sorry, okay.
Got a camera? 1, 2, 3.
Smiles, big smiles.
One more over here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Thank you all.